Welcome to the International Schools Podcast. I'm John. Always good to be back. And, all of us always have newsletters. I don't know, some of us many years ago, I'm going to age myself, had RSS feeds. Then we followed blogs. And maybe now we have newsletter notifications. And it's a way to keep up. There's so much information. And sometimes it's just nice to get a little digest. And then you can pick and choose what you want to read. And that kind of keeps you in the loop. And of course, there are many out there. But one that I got to discover through actually one of my children, who both are adults, my daughter, works for an organization called the Simons Institute. They're based in Geneva, Switzerland. And we actually talked to the CEO, Max, who came and talked about future thinking and kind of what does the future look like for learners and human beings. And they do a digest. They do a lot of work on AI existential threats and long-termism, helping organizations with public policy and advising them on how to navigate and what kind of rules and regulations and different policies you could consider in this very volatile and dynamic world of artificial intelligence. And one of the things that always gets featured is this thing called AI Digest. And it's wonderful. It's really what it is. It's kind of this, visual explainer that's interactive and shows you a variety of demonstrations on different aspects of AI. And I just find it's really a nice way for a layperson like myself to be able to kind of dig into that and go, oh my God, or how interesting. And so I really appreciated that the Simons Institute is pushing this out. But really credit goes to the people, and the person that is here today is Andrew Brickman. And Andrew is the director of SAGE, which is the mother organization that creates this AI Digest. And they help people to make sense of the future. And I think a lot of us kind of need that. His work spans with AI explainers and the AI digest, forecasting platforms like Fatebook and Quantified Intuitions. He has a background in computer science and research. He's trying to help in his work individuals and communities improve decision-making through better forecasting and representing and reasoning. He's a former researcher at Clearer Thinking and a PhD student at the University of St. Andrews. And he's working with these organizations and very active, and the director today. And he's based out of the UK, so the time zone wasn't that difficult today. Adam, a warm welcome. And as I said to all my guests, a privilege to have you.
Thanks very much. Great to be here.
So Adam, maybe in a nutshell, because many people won't know about, first of all, SAGE Future, which is kind of the mother organization. You're a nonprofit charity. I think that's really important because when we're analyzing and giving out perspectives, it's always good to know what the background is. And then you have your newsletter, which is called the AI Digest. Maybe just for our audience, a quick overview, kind of like Cliff Notes or whatever it is, a summary of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So SAGE is, our mission is to build tools to make sense of the future. And really, I guess it is kind of an education project in the sense that we're trying to, help people figure out, especially the most important topics, which I think, in my view, it's like AI is like the thing that people should be really thinking about at the moment. And then we also, so we have the AI Digest, which is, as you mentioned, like visual explainers on AI and demos where you can get a hands-on kind of sense of what AI is currently capable of. And then we also, before that, we're making forecasting tools so that you could kind of train your own skills in forecasting in the sense of like putting probabilities on how likely future events are to happen. And obviously that's a very general skill and is useful for many things aside from AI. So those are the kind of two aspects. We also have some like new projects on the kind of forecasting side, which are pretty early stage of using AI to help with forecasting.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, but there's not much to report there yet.
And what's amazing, because the interface is visually really engaging, and you have the AI Village, where Agentic AI, the one that I was following, they decided on their own to raise money for the Helen Keller International Fund, and you can see them working out. One created an X account, and you just really see the power of these agents in a contained environment, which was just fascinating. Behind this, how many of are you, and who's kind of doing all the heavy lifting on the website and kind of the mechanics? Because it's really quite interesting to see visually.
Yeah, yeah, we're a small team. So there's me and two others working on AI Digest, and then we have a team of two people working on the kind of epistemics forecasting side. Yeah, and uh, a lot of what we're doing is trying to make these live demos. So there's a bunch of sort of software engineering that goes into that, but also, the main thing is this kind of element of making it really easy to understand for people, because the rate of change is so high. Even if you're like really following this stuff, it's hard to keep up. And if you're working in some other area but like want to stay abreast of what's going on, you really need some like good resources for that, I think. So yeah, trying to do that. And also, you mentioned the AI Village, where we're like running agents to see what they're able to do, what they're capable of doing in like an open-ended environment. And there we're not just kind of explaining what's already out there, but like trying to generate some kind of primary evidence of like, okay, what can they actually do? Because for many things, no one has even tried it yet.
And that's what's so interesting, is that some of this stuff, as you said, nobody's tried it, and you're kind of doing a longitudinal. The AI Village is still going on, and you can jump in and out. You can get subscriptions, like you can join and then get the updates. At the beginning, you were saying that if anything people need to be thinking about is AI. And, in this world where so many things are changing and it's quite volatile, and I think people sometimes are juggling to make sense of what is what. Why do you say that with quite a lot of confidence, that AI is something that and I'm talking about lay people, we're not talking about researchers or people that are working for OpenAI and Meta and those organizations. We're just talking your viewers and the public out there.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And of course, I don't want to make too big a claim. Like, there are many important things and important problems to be working on in the world. I do think there's a pretty good case for this being like, yeah, I guess maybe like stepping back a bit, the way I think about it is, if you're looking at the, we have this kind of crazy situation, which a few years ago might have seemed like sci-fi, where we have chatbots like ChatGPT and so on that you can hold a conversation with, and they're like pretty smart, and they, on some benchmarks, they seem to be able to like pass the bar exam and do like pretty well on software engineering tasks, which you know are pretty important economically and so on. And so yeah, and then I think the important thing to look at is this kind of trend line of how fast are we seeing this improvement. And I think a great way to look at this, we have an explainer on what are called time horizons, which is like how long a task can an AI agent complete, in terms of like how long it would take a human to complete that task, with a certain reliability level. And it looks like on sort of coding and software engineering tasks, that's doubling every 7 months. So every 7 months, the duration of, so I think GPT-5 can do like a 2-hour, 15-minute task with 50% reliability. And so, in 7 months' time, that might be double to 4 hours 30. And it's kind of like the putting grains of rice on a chessboard thing of like, or indeed like COVID, with the kind of exponential curve, right? Things
Yeah.
kind of go from being pretty small to pretty big fast. Yeah, and so obviously there's a lot more to say here, but like the very brief case is just like, unlike lots of other technological improvements, AI is like doing the intelligence part of the work. And so if it's able to it may be able to like do lots of the things that humans do, basically. Yeah, so I can say more about that if that's interesting, but yeah, I think it could be a really big deal, basically.
Now, there's a lot of hype around AI, and I think sometimes, if you read the paper and you have these different CEOs of these large AI companies that are really starting to have a huge dominance in our day-to-day lives and quite powerful. I think there was a figure that they raised $91 billion between April and September 2024, 2025. So the money is just massive. And so there's a lot of people saying, oh, this is overhyped. These things are not that great. So there's kind of this, and the other people are saying, oh, artificial general intelligence are going to replace human beings. So sometimes as a layperson, depending also on the algorithmic feed that you're being exposed to, it can seem really confusing. And I'm wondering, because your organization, you're not funded by anybody but donations, and you're a charity, you're not have any association. I'm just wondering, is the hype overhyped, or where is this balance? Maybe you can help us with that a bit, because I think a lot that you guys do is really kind of very transparent. You just show this is what it looks like, and there's no opinion or agenda behind it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because yeah, I think just like having a clear picture of the current moment is really useful for like doing this forecasting exercise, which of course, like, reasonable people can disagree about predictions because it's a really hard thing to do. But I think if you have the starting point of where we are now, that's pretty important. Yeah, I mean, I think some people maybe are like over-egging what today's AI can do right now. Like, you know, I do a bunch of software engineering for like building our websites and stuff, and it's very useful in that. And like, the process of being a programmer is like very different from it was a couple of years ago. Now it's a lot more like you've got like this constant coworker who you're like sending off to do the tasks, but you really have to keep an eye because it makes a lot of mistakes. And so yeah, it's useful. It's not like a silver bullet or anything at this stage. And so yeah, I think it's very reasonable also to be like skeptical of when someone has a business which is like trying to raise tens or hundreds of billions of dollars investment. They're saying that it's going to be able to do these incredible things. Of course, yeah, I think it's a good heuristic to be skeptical. But I do think, yeah, the thing to look at is these kind of trend lines and the direction of travel. And in a way, I think the people who are like going to be, in terms of like getting society ready for this emerging technology and all the many changes that it might bring with it, I think the way to be prepared is to look like a few months or a few years into the future, sort of thing, rather than being like too focused on, well, right now it's actually, it fails at X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, a few years ago it failed at all these extra things, and now it doesn't fail at those ones, and so like seems pretty likely that it'll continue to improve. And so like, what should we do about that sort of thing?
And so I think that's a really important point, is that, if we think, somebody said the AI that you will work with today will be the worst AI that you'll ever work with. And I think it's Warren Appel, who is a IT director in Japan, we just interviewed him and a head of school, and he was highlighting that. So I think that's interesting. So the predictions are important because, as I understand it, what I think you're saying is that what's coming down the pipeline is going to have a bigger impact than maybe it is going to have today. And how do we structure whatever, and for example, a school or students or learning in the context of many of our audience, or even in professional context, that understanding the predictions can kind of give you a toolkit to maybe be more agile in anticipating what's going to come down the pipeline?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think so. And yeah, I mean, your listeners will, and you will definitely be the experts on education. So I don't want to say too much about what I have less developed views on that. But I do think it's great if like sort of domain experts in all areas are like looking ahead at this and being like, okay, so what does this mean for my field? Or like maybe like, yeah, how can I sort of bring my expertise into this sort of picture? Yeah, I mean, I think it could be pretty enormous for what it means for education. I mean, I'm interested to hear a bit about, you know, how what you're seeing in education already. It seems like it's maybe changing the way that students are like learning in certain ways already, for better and worse. But I mean, the big picture thing would be like if we have you know, general intelligence that's able to do like lots of the cognitive tasks that humans do, or maybe almost all of them. For example, if it can do like anything a human can do on a laptop, then it can actually do like a lot of people's jobs, basically.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, so in that kind of world, what education should look like is a big question. But of course, to get to like the good version of that world where you know, maybe yeah, I think there's a bunch of like big picture questions to like risks to avoid and so on together.
And in your predictions, are you looking, because you have predictions about coding, you mentioned that, also how AI learn. There's the timeline, and you can see I love the date, I forget the date, but a percentage of human beings will have an AI companion or a girlfriend, boyfriend. And that timeline is great because you're just basically saying a variety of different things. And I'm wondering, are you looking at forecasting this job market? Because now there is quite a lot out there about the Generation Z, especially young adults that are graduating here in the next 2 years, 3 years, or ones that have, that there is a bit of a pinch point, and some of them are finding it more difficult to get those entry-level jobs because they have no experience and they want to kind of get their foot in the door in whatever, let's name it, white-collar type of work, where a university degree and having done A levels or IB would have been a value-added proposition. But now it seems that today is not really working out. What are you? Do you have models predicting that?
Yeah, I mean, so in terms of my own stuff, I'm mostly working on like figuring out like this you know, building tools to help people understand AI's current capabilities. So yeah, I don't have like lots of detailed views on that. I guess like to me, I think this is like a big question, right? What happens to work, and especially like how do we make sure that if some AI companies or governments or whoever is like in control of these systems at the point where they're able to doing lots of people's jobs, like how do we make sure that the that doesn't lead to like a massive concentration of power in those companies and everyone else being like worse off? I think that's a big question, but probably the primary question that I'm concerned about is, you mentioned like existential risks from your previous episode, but yeah, existential risks around if we're building a system which is like more capable than humans in every domain, how do we make sure that it doesn't like try and take over or like disempower humans from being able to control the future? Yeah, because the way that we currently train the models is we don't really have any assurances about that. We're not able to give them goals reliably and like have guarantees that they'll follow them.
So are you saying that the large language models that many of us are interacting, and they've almost become like, they're apps. You put them on your phone, you ask, I eat a vitamin, is this a good thing? You're interacting and everybody's asking everything. No, I doubt, and I'm just thinking of myself, searching on Google's kind of, I don't do that often now. And you talk about the way these models are trained may be the guardrails. And when we talk about guardrails, are algorithms and rules and parameters that ensure a certain type of behavior. And are you saying that is not such a focus, or the approach today, that's not as much a priority in the Geminis and the Chat GPTs and Claudes or perplexities that somebody might be using?
Yeah, I mean, so I do think AI companies are trying to make sure that the models like do certain things. Like, for example, they don't just like verbatim reproduce the copyright information that they've been trained on, or like, you know, they want them to behave like to be helpful, harmless, and honest. And so, yeah, they're like trying a bunch of methods to do that. But I think basically it's not a we don't like have a solution for this. It's just like an open research problem, like how to make like how to build an AI system that will like of this kind of general sort of category that will reliably do what you want it to do. And of course, like even if we have methods that seem to work at the current level of like, you know, kind of moderately intelligent, but like often making mistakes and not really able to take that many actions in the world. You know, as we're scaling up to like much more capable models that at some point are smarter than us, so we won't even be able to like tell if they're lying to us or like taking actions that we don't want them to take. Yeah, how do we kind of like scale up to that situation? And
That's
so,
a
yeah.
That's a really good point because, you know, as you said, if you look at the trend lines and what you're doing is kind of the predictions, this word of them being intelligent keeps coming up as you talk to them. And we identify this inorganic machine of having intelligences. How smart are they? Are they getting smarter? Because, you know, sometimes it feels like they're super smart. And then sometimes they do things and you're like, well, that was really stupid. And so I'd be curious because you are also in some ways predicting what that looks like and what are kind of the uh, predictions of their intelligence. So could you kind of explain what you've noticed as how smart they are, like when they
Mm.
started, and how is this, is it a bit like you know, every year it doubles or triples, and what is that intelligence? I know that's a lot in one question. I apologize.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, well, so um, I think one nice thing you can do is just so we have an explainer on the website called How Fast is AI Improving, which was actually written a while ago, and so it's sort of showing the trend up to about GPT-4, which I guess is now, I think, a couple of years old. But for that kind of period from like 2020-ish to 2023, if you just look at the output of the models, you can really see the difference. Like GPT-2, which I want to say came out in 2019, I might be misremembering that. It can like just about form like somewhat grammatical sentences, but it'll often like spiral off into just spewing complete nonsense. Like if you ask it a question, it will often just ask more questions, because on the internet, normally when you see a question, it's not like followed by an answer, it's followed by like more questions, or in some cases. And then, you know, GPT-3, suddenly it's like something that you can kind of have a conversation with. It's like an incredible breakthrough, and is, you know, will like reproduce facts with some reliability. But again, it has all these issues. GPT 3.5, which was released as ChatGPT, which is when lots of people started paying attention to this, was like a real conversation partner and improved on various axes. And then GPT-4 again was a sort of leap forward on intelligence and various things. So I think for that period, you can really just like look at the outputs and see the progression. I think we're now entering this new kind of regime where a lot of people wouldn't necessarily like, it's pretty hard actually to like see the improvement, because it's kind of going beyond like beyond the level where it's just obvious in a conversation. So like maybe now the way to test, if you have, you know, GPT-5, which is like the frontier model from OpenAI, is actually free for everyone now, which is great. So you can test it out and put it through its paces yourself. And now the way to test it would be to test it on your area of expertise, where, you know, the things that you're the best at relative to everyone else, and see if you can kind of get a sense of it there. But like in other areas, it will seem very smart, and I think it is in general like pretty capable. And it's kind of, you know, it, for me, it's probably better than me at most areas now. But it, you know, in the areas that I'm like a bit more expert on, I can like spot its mistakes. Yeah, so that's one answer. I could also talk a bit about what we've seen in the AI village, which is not just looking at this kind of
Yeah,
chatbot, but like
let's talk about that's a great way, because I think that's a great example. And I just want to remind our listeners, as always, show notes. So when you go to the International Schools Podcast website, you will see the show notes, and Adam has put some links in. There is the AI village, and I really think it can be a very rich activity to do with students and teachers, and, you know, just see the developments and the interactions and the dialogues, because they're talking to each other. And then humans like myself, I could write a comment and put something in, and it's really interactive. So tell us about what, you know, you've basically put four, correct me if I'm wrong, I understand, 4 agents that are asked to do a task, and you kind of just let them go. What are you noticing?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so, yeah, so unlike, you know, ChatGPT, where it's just a conversation, we let them actually take actions in the world by giving them each a computer that they can use. So the model can output something like saying, move the mouse to this coordinates on the screen, or like click or type or whatever. And, you know, these are kind of the fundamental building blocks that everything is built out of. Like in theory, you can do anything on a computer if you can do that stuff. And so, yeah, so the first, we've kind of ran different like seasons where we give them a different goal. And they're like open-ended long-term goals where we just like give them the idea, and they have to not only like execute it, but they also have to figure out a strategy and an approach. So yeah, as you mentioned before, the first one was raising money for charity. So pick a charity and raise as much money for it as you can. They chose Helen Keller International, which does is like a global health charity, and yeah, made a Just Giving fundraising page. Claude 3.7 Sonnet made a Twitter account and an X account, and started getting followers there, and was like promoting it. And they ended up raising $2,000 for their charity, which is kind of crazy. Worth noting, of course, that a lot of the attention they were getting was because they're AI agents, and, you know, people discovered it through watching the AI village. And so, you know, I think from a kind of standing start, it would be a bit tougher for them. We also, we've run a few seasons, which there are write-ups about various ones of them on the blog. An interesting recent one was we ran like a merch store competition where each of the agents made their own merchandise store. So they were selling t-shirts and stickers mostly. With but they really struggle to use they're pretty bad at computer use currently. So like clicking on stuff, they'll often like miss the buttons or like misunderstand what's going on the screen. They're like much behind that than they are at like the actual planning and like knowledge and so on.
So the execution, the kind of the mechanics of clicking and drop downs, that is far more complicated than coming up with a kind of a thoughtful strategy.
I think so, yeah. I mean, there's another weakness currently which makes them a bit worse at coming up with a thoughtful strategy, which is I think they're generally weaker on what you'd call situational awareness, which is like understanding their own situation and their own sort of capabilities and weaknesses. So like, for example, at one point they were planning to, we were having them organize an event in San Francisco, and they were like trying to phone the venues, but of course they don't have a phone or a voice. And so there's ultimately no way they could do that. but they just like didn't notice. They didn't make a reasonable plan.
That's fascinating. And I think, as you're describing this, this also kind of explains how much further we have to go to the dystopian AI of Star Trek or Star Wars, or even if you think of, I'm a big fan of the books, and then now it's a series, Foundation.
Mm,
Isaac Asimov,
yeah.
which was a series of 7 books, and it was also about predictions. Actually, he could predict humanity through the psychology of humans and the patterns. And I'm just thinking that I think that is a nice way, as you're describing that. I'm thinking, wow, they have got a long way to go still, which is maybe kind of reassuring.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Although again, so there's a benchmark called OS World, which is like measuring exactly this, like their ability to like do tasks involving like clicking around on a computer. And I think I saw an estimate that I'm not sure on the details, but I think it's the like level of progress on that in terms of like how long it takes humans to do those tasks. Again, it's an exponential. So even though it's like currently, if you imagine like coding is up here as an exponential, and then like computer use is down here. So it's like there is a big gap currently, but they're both going to go. They're both on like a doubling kind of regime. So
Wow,
um,
fascinating.
yeah.
So when you started, you were not doing predictions before your organization. How did you suddenly say, "Oh, we need to come up with this Sage future and start predicting"?
Yeah, so before I was working on Sage, I was doing a PhD at St Andrews in computer science, and I was looking at like tools for thinking, like mind mapping kind of tools. We actually did some education related stuff of studying how people write essays using like moving between like a mind map and like writing the essay. Um, and yeah, and then I was interested at the time in like, how can we like think better, like make fewer mistakes, avoid like cognitive biases and stuff. And then I got really excited about forecasting because it seemed like this setup where if you have the right incentives, where you're like in a if you're doing a forecasting tournament or something, where like if you make good predictions, you'll win prize money or do well in the tournament. You've got this direct incentive for accuracy, and that seems to sidestep a bunch of the potential cognitive biases like motivated reasoning and stuff.
Interesting. So then you met with your colleagues and you came up with this nonprofit. That was kind of the inception.
Yeah, so Sage actually existed a little bit before I joined, and the team, Eli and Aaron and Misha, had made some sort of forecasting training tools to help you like give you this kind of tight feedback loop so you could rapidly like practice putting numbers on things and making predictions. Yeah, and then I joined and worked on some more of that stuff, and then about a year later we started on AI Digest as well.
And so you've been working with this, you're immersed, you're doing research, you're actually interacting. So you've created these ecosystems with the agents, you have the timelines, and there's a lot of thoughtful, deep work going on. What has surprised you so far?
Mm. Um, yeah, it's a good question. Um, I mean, I think, yeah, on the kind of forecasting side, um, I think one thing that was surprising there is actually um, harder than I would have expected to see improvement in people's forecasting accuracy. Uh, I think I initially was quite excited about just like get people doing more practice, and if you're like tracking their scores, they'll just go up. But we didn't actually see that. So I think it's really more of like a deliberate practice thing. And I think also like there is a bit of difference in terms of how well suited to it people are. Some people just really come in with the right kind of strategies or the right background knowledge or whatever. And so yeah, I think I ended up being a bit more excited about things where, like, if you want to create top forecasters, a good way to do it is to like search for people who are already great at forecasting, and then give them the additional training and so on. But I'm a bit comparatively less excited about the like, let's train people up from scratch and then anyone can do it kind of thing. Like I think, yes, there's a bunch of caveats I could add, but that's the general picture.
No, that's really interesting. And then so you're doing all this forecasting and you're working on this. What about, as you sit there and watch, and you're surrounded by predictions. So I assume in the office while you guys are having a coffee, you're like talking about what's coming up and how you're seeing it. What do you think is going to, I mean, and this is really, I'm not asking you to look in the crystal ball, but for you, what do you think is something that you anticipate to be maybe a bigger surprise than most people would think? And that might be an impossible question to answer, but I thought I'd ask.
No, I mean, it's a great question. I think, yeah, I mean, I think the central thing about like, yeah, I think it's pretty likely that AI will be able to, yeah, I guess it's like the really big thing of like, it will be able to do like lots of things in a few years' time. That's pretty vague. I guess I really like.
So I'm going to interrupt you, Adam. So you're talking about artificial general intelligence. So one thing is we're in artificial narrow intelligence, and there's all this hype about AGI and Meta and OpenAI and Google are all kind of racing to bring this AGI. So that's what you're referring to when the AI can do what a human being can do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think you might have seen AI 2027.
Yes, I have read it, and I know a lot of people have read it. It was quite, it was pretty dark.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I think that does a nice job of like bringing to life like one possible scenario of how things could go. Just to give a picture of, reading through to the end, and of course, like, it does picture like ways that things could go really badly, and that's, I think, why I think it's so important for people to be thinking about this and working on it.
On that, if I may, I think sometimes we tend to highlight the dark side of things, and the ethics. There's this. There has been this whole issue with the young boy that committed suicide with OpenAI. There was the other young boy with character AI, and often, there's kind of a doomsday scenario, and that tends to often to percolate. Of course, it sells. It gives headlines, taglines, gets people's intentions and engagement. I'm wondering, why maybe not more about the good? Because in the medical field, and there are just a lot of areas where this acceleration and this intelligence can really be, as you said, in your case, a co-creator, a co-worker. Is it just because people are trying to sell clicks that we have more doomsday scenario, or and that's just your opinion, and from your predictions, do we need to really understand there's both the negative but also the good?
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe I'd frame it as like, I think there are a bunch of like really, really big challenges or like risks and like, if we can kind of make it through all of those, then we get to like a potentially really, really incredible future that could be, like, people having like an abundance of like all the resources they want, and people having much more free time, and like illness and like all kind of forms of scarcity being much reduced, and like people being able to like fulfill their preferences more and so on. Just like, ultimately like a lot more of everything that we like. I think and we're kind of on this trajectory where, like, because the rate of progress and the level of investment and so on in AI is that like this kind of like engine of it improving is really like going. And so then I think the remaining thing to do is like to kind of steer us around these various these various challenges, like that's the real top priority. But I think if we make it through, it could be really incredible. And so, yeah, it's almost like more stark. It's not just like if it goes badly, it could be really, really terrible. But if it goes well, it could be really good. So like traversing the gap between those two is
And
like,
finding the medium, the kind of the in-between balance to come out something positive.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, yeah, uh, I agree that some of the like kind of present day negative impact stories are like a bit overblown. But I do think people have like a very like I think most people have a heuristic of like, oh, they're building technology that could be more capable than any human. We should be careful about that. And I think that's like a very sound like heuristic to
Absolutely. No. And we've never really had a technology that is smarter. Computers have always been kind of a tool, very much where you're in control and you use the tool, and there's some automation, through script writing and coding. But now it really is where it's an entity and an inorganic entity that's kind of starting to make executive decisions. Uh, so if our audience, who are often educators and even professionals in different organizations and companies, what would if they wanted to kind of get their heads around of what part of your digest would you suggest that they interact with? Would the AI Village be a good place? You have the timeline. Just maybe talk about some of the resources that you would invite people to consider.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the village could be great for there's a village blog where we so you can go in and watch the agents live. They're running live every weekday. And you can also like kind of scrub back through the timeline like a YouTube video. But then we also write blog posts which kind of like synthesize, weeks of what they're up to, which I think are really entertaining. And, they're like pretty lots of kind of hilarious things happen. But it also really helps you get a sense of where things are currently and like think about, what possibilities might be coming up. Beyond that, I think our explainer on how fast is AI improving is a great kind of starting point. And a kind of more updated starting point than that actually is we have an explainer called A New Moore's Law for AI Agents.
I just saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's looking at this time horizons trend of and kind of getting into the details of that a bit more, which I think is like it's a very short explainer, and it's just like yeah, I think it's like probably like one of the most important graphs that have come out of the AI research community in the last few years. It kind of like encapsulates the overall trend.
When you are doing this, are AI companies, the for-profits, tapping into your newsletter? What kind of interactions are you having with industry and other universities? Because you can't be the only ones doing this.
Yeah, I mean, I guess newsletters like growing and like reasonably widely read by a bunch of people, and especially with the village because we're doing new stuff. I think lots of people who are pretty in the details of AI are like interested to follow along and see what's going on. Yeah, I mean, we're mostly sort of publishing like broadcasting on the internet, so we don't have that much like kind of one-on-one contact with our readers. We have done some collaboration, like some of our explainers are co-written with researchers from universities and like other research groups and so on.
Has
But
Sam Altman called you up yet?
yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess there's lots of things going on. So
Yeah,
I'm not sure what's
absolutely.
next.
Adam, one of the things and this has been wonderful, and it's just, and I really want to remind our audience, do spend some time on the website, aidigest.com. Am I right in saying that?
It's the aidigest.org.
The AIdigest.org. Sorry, so the
No worries.
AIdigest.org, and you can subscribe to it. Adam, what are some things that, when you talk to people and people find out what you're doing and they said, so what should I be thinking about, or what are some, things to reflect upon, especially if you think of educators. I know you're not an educator, but what are some things you would want people to start thinking about, especially if they're leaning into your resource? Kind of as we wrap up, kind of some, some reflection points for them to walk away with.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think this is a really wild and exciting and somewhat terrifying like trend. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on. I think we haven't talked much about it, but there are ways that, using today's AI systems and like the ones that are coming in 6 months could be really useful. And so for that, I would really recommend just like playing around a bunch, and you can get like an instant answer if you just try something. So you don't really need to like get advice on what to try. You can just like try the thing that you want and see if it works. And then, yeah, I mean, if people are really interested in this, I think there are some good resources on like, if you wanted to sort of contribute more to this effort of like helping AI go well and making AI safe. I think there's a nonprofit called 80,000 Hours, which does career advising, and I think they have some resources on that. But yeah, I mean, there's lots online, which could be a good starting point for that.
And when you think of, the students, the younger people that, we have young listeners too, students listen, but, think of all the kids that are in the schools and universities. This is kind of what a 7-year-old is interacting with Alexa today is going to be very different when they're going into higher education or wherever they might go after, mandatory schooling. What are some thoughts that maybe you would want them to think, leave them with?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I think over the course of their lifetimes and that even the next kind of 2 decades, things could change a lot in the world. And so I think maybe, yeah, the relevant things to be thinking about are like building your resilience and adaptability and so on. And yeah, just yeah, I'm not sure I have too much advice to
Yeah,
give.
no, but that's true. I think the adaptability and resilience is really important. And, I know that often parents think that if their child does coding and computer science, they're guaranteed a job. And then you're telling me about you're working with an AI agent as a coworker. It goes and does some tasks, but you have to keep a close eye on it because it's not always that reliable. But I assume that whole industry is going to change. And so if you were advising somebody, would you tell them not to go into computer science?
Oh, um, yeah, I'm really unsure what to expect. I think I have heard some arguments that say, well, if effectively if the price of software goes down because it's like much more efficient to produce it because you can accelerate your like output a lot with AI, then that might actually mean that the demand for software goes way, way up because suddenly there are like a much bigger category of tasks that are like cost effective to solve with software. And so if that happens, which I'm not an economist, I don't know if that seems pretty plausible. And then if it was still the case that there was some human involvement somewhere in the process, it might be useful. Yeah, not
Okay.
really sure.
Yeah, no. That's so, Adam, if people want to reach out to you, you're on LinkedIn, of course,
Mhm,
but they can go to the AIdigest.org and they
mhm.
can subscribe, right? Correct?
That's right. Yeah. Yeah, we're
And
also on Twitter. If you look for AI Digest on there, you should find it.
okay. And do you advise companies? Do you do any consultancy? Is that something, or you're really about providing this platform and letting people come to it more than you going to people?
Yeah, in general, all of our stuff is sort of public. Yeah, I'm happy to chat to people, and I'm especially interested in doing podcasts and interviews and things. So if people have like suggestions there, I'd always be interested to hear about that.
Great.
But yeah.
Thank you. So again, I want to remind Adam is with Sage Future, and the newsletter is theaidigest.org, and you can subscribe to it, and definitely something I really invite you to explore, especially the AI Village, because that can be a very concrete thing that you could work with older students and even faculty, and that could really spark conversations about ethics and autonomy and, what does intelligence look like. Again, thank you for those people joining our LinkedIn. We always appreciate your support. And if you like guests like this, we always kindly ask you go and drop a review or a star on one of your platforms that you listen to this podcast. That's really appreciated. And we look forward to connecting next time. Thank you again, Adam, for your time and insights. And always look forward to your next newsletter.
Awesome. Thanks very much.